Hello and welcome to our latest video here on Sprues and Brews, and today we're going to be looking at two brand new books for Warhammer 40,000. The first one is Zone Octarius Book 1 Rising Tide, and the second one is the Mission Pack Containment, which is a brand new Crusade book. This is going to be quite a quick flick through of both of these books. I have just recently completed a written write-up on both of these. They can be found in the link in the YouTube description, so you can check those out at your leisure. Both of these books have gone up for pre-order today, and they're out next Saturday. So without further ado, we're going to start going through both of these books and to see what they're all about, see if they're worth your hard-earned pennies. So yeah, we're going to first take a look at Zone Octarius. So Zone Octarius has been talked about quite a lot recently in the lore, mainly due to the fact we've got a new kill team box set in this particular war zone. In this war zone, we've mainly got the Tyranids fighting the Orcs and the forces of the Imperium. In particular, the Deathwatch, one of my favourite Imperium armies. So within this book, we've got some Codex Supplements, and we've got some new campaign rules, and we have also got some appendices as well. So it's presented very nicely, as all Warhammer, all Games Workshop books are. Nice bit of artwork on the front there of a big nasty Tyranid fighting some guardsmen. So let's have a look inside. So here we have a brief introduction into the war zone. We've got the full contents of the book here. Some glorious paint jobs there from the heavy metal team. Now, one of the main draws to this book for me is the amount of lore that's in here. A lot of the lore that is in the 9th edition codexes tend to be stuff that they reuse quite a lot, telling you about the armies. They're saving all the kind of current, or a lot of the current time frame lore for these Warzone books. So I would highly recommend, if you can, even if you sort of borrow a copy from a friend, if there's not much of the content in here which, you know, you're interested in, borrow it off a friend, have a read. It's really good. It's a really good, interesting read. It's almost like Black Library standard, I think. Well, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but it's still very, very good. It talks about what's going on in the conflict. Quite a few other armies are mentioned. The Eldar, for example, without going too much into spoilers. I do sort of talk a little bit more about the lore in the written article, so make sure you check out that link in the description, and the World Eaters as well. But we'll go past that. So the lore is very interesting in this book. Whether or not it's worth the money to justify it for lore, probably not. But it's a nice bonus. It's a nice thing to have. And you've got lots of glorious artwork in here, as you would imagine with it being a Games Workshop product. But I know what you're all chomping at the bit for is the rules and all the extra campaign mechanics that are in this book. And that's what we're going to come across first, the campaign rules. So this is the Pancalus Assault campaign, and this talks about how you can play out a campaign with your friends. Now, interestingly, this book has no battle plans. So when it talks about how to run this campaign, it's picking out missions from previous publications, mainly the core rules. I would have liked to have seen some battle plans in here. Obviously, we have got the Crusade book, which we're going to be talking about in a few moments. That works really well with this one. But at least you have got some campaign content in here, even if they're not missions. So all this kind of stuff we've seen before. This is quite cool. It basically gives you a campaign result based on your strategic value at the end of the campaign. Just really sort of staples how well you've done once you've reached the end of your campaign. Between each of your missions, you can choose to gain some victor bonuses, which you can take into the next battle and run through the rest of your campaign. There's stuff here which can increase and decrease the cost of some of your stratagems or your opponent's stratagems. For example, once per battle, when used as a strategic ploy stratagem, that stratagem costs 0 CP. So that's like a one-use thing. That's very, very cool. It goes into more example campaign trees. So as I say, it's got sort of 3 stages here. You've got victor bonuses between them. You know, if the attacker wins, you move on to this mission. Defender wins, you move on to this mission. The size and scope of the missions are on there as well. But these are all missions from previous publications. Now for the really interesting campaign new additions. There's 3 really that I'm going to pick out here. So you've got Concealed Deployment. Think of this very similar to the Gene Stealer Cult's deployment at the moment. So it's talking about you can choose to sort of deploy blips instead of units. It costs you CP depending on the combined power level of what you're hiding. And unlike the Gene Stealer Cult, you actually reveal them straight after deployment. So you both finish deployment and then starting with the attacker, you start revealing your unit. So by the time the battle starts, you'll know exactly where everything is. The Gene Stealer Cults at the moment don't have to do that until it's the sort of start of their movement phase. So potentially if you're a cultist player going second, you're not revealing your units until your opponent's gone first. So similar but not the same. This though is very, very cool. So shadow missions. These can be played out during your battles. So when you're deploying your army, so if you deploy an infantry unit into strategic reserves, what you can choose to do is send them on a shadow mission. At the start of the second battle round, depending on what mission you've sent them on, which you could, roll a d6 and send them on a random one, or, be better narratively to send one that kind of matches the mission that you're on. You roll a dice and you see if they're successful. So as you can see, for most of the missions, it's quite hard to complete, or impossible in one case, to complete in Battle Round 2. If you do complete it, then you unlock the mission to the result. If you do complete it in Battle Round 2, then you get the accomplishment as seen here, which all basically increase your opponent's use of CP. So for example, Sabotage Comms Network, if you accomplish that, the cost of all battle tactic stratagems your opponent has access to has just increased by 1 CP for the rest of the campaign. That's really good. Should your team be successful, then they can rejoin the game. They can come in from strategic reserves as per the normal rules. If they don't succeed, you can either recall them anyway, or you can keep them in strategic reserve and try again on the next turn. It becomes slightly easier, but this is like your last chance really to complete it. In either case, when you come to bring them on as strategic reserves, much like when you're kind of rolling for if a transport blows up, you roll for every model in that unit that's been doing the shadow mission. And on a 1, you lose a guy, basically, of your choice. This is to represent them falling during the shadow mission. Now, straight away, I'm like, I love this. I like this kind of thing. I definitely want to include this in my narrative campaign. If you had the time and the space, how cool would it be to adapt this to Kill Team and have almost like a little mini game going on whilst your main game's going on, to try and accomplish these different things? It would take a little bit of adapting, but I think that would be great for a narrative game. We then move on to army rules. Got an introduction here, telling us about what we're about to read. And the first one we come across is the Codex Supplement for the Cadians. Now, I have been wanting to start an army from Cadia for ages. I finally started building and painting some. And lo and behold, here's a brand new Codex Supplement. Now, the Astra Militarum don't have a 9th edition Codex yet. So this is kind of a bit of a sample of what we might see, or, the direction of which the Codex is going to go. For this particular supplement, we have 3 Warlord traits. Gifted Commander was previewed on Warcom, but another one that I quite like is the Steel Discipline Aura one. While a friendly Cadian unit is performing an action within 6 inches of the model, that unit can still shoot without the action failing. Really good. I think Gifted Commander is probably the best one there, but that's a close second. We've got 3 relics. We've got 4 relics. We've got the one that was shown off, the sword on Warcom, but then we also have Gatekeeper, which is a battle cannon replacement. It's still a heavy D6, 72-inch range, strength 8, AP -2, flat 3 damage. I do like reliable damage, and interestingly, if you are firing into Chaos unit, you're adding 1 to the wound roll as well. So quite a reliable little battle cannon, that one. You've then got 2 pages of Stratagems. So again, we've seen a couple of these previewed, but the one that really jumped out at me, maybe not the most competitive, but surely one of the most fun, is Field Promotion. Only costs 1 CP, and basically when your Warlord dies, or as soon as your Warlord dies, you spend this 1 CP, you pick another officer that you've got on the battlefield. Suddenly he's your Warlord. You pick a Warlord trait for him, and also if your opponent has anything that triggers when your Warlord dies, such as slay the Warlord if they've gone for that as their secondary objective, they have to kill this new Warlord first. So yeah, definitely if they've got something like that, you want to be spending a CP to kind of slow them down. And there's nothing here that I can see that doesn't stop you from doing that multiple times. So for as long as you've got an officer on the battlefield, you could keep promoting and getting a Warlord, which is very, very cool. Another one of my favourites is Shock Troops. So this costs between 1 and 2 CP, and this really plays into the Cadian regimental doctrine, because when you use this stratagem, that unit is considered to have remained stationary. So with Cadians, if they remain stationary, they're re-rolling hit rolls of 1. And then each time a range attack is made by a model in this unit, if they're within half range, then you improve the AP by 1, which is never anything to be sniffed at, really. That costs 1 CP if the unit is got the keyword of an infantry. Otherwise, it costs 2 CP. So you could use that on a tank. Although I think you might get more use out of that on a big unit of guardsmen or conscripts or something like that. And the last one I'm going to pick out is Load, Fire, Reload. So this is when you pick a Cadian vehicle that has a blast weapon. When you come to fire that blast weapon, an unmodified 6 counts as 2 hits. Unless you're firing into a monster or a vehicle, then it counts as 3 hits. If a hit is scored for that attack, then until the start of your next turn, the target cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. So it's a nice little bonus there, but it's the extra hits that you want. So suddenly that reliable, Gatekeeper, it might only be doing 3 damage instead of potential of 6. You could be getting some extra hits with it, thus doing more reliable damage. So very, very cool. So that's Cadian stuff. We've got some more Imperium content for the Deathwatch. So this is the army. This is the Army of Renown. These have been in previous Warzone books, and they're a different way of building a particular force. So this one is for the Deathwatch, and it really plays into the kill teams, which is a popular way of building your Deathwatch unit. So instead of having a unit of intercessors, you would have a Fortis kill team. You could add different models into that unit, such as Outriders, Hellblasters. It's a really fun mechanic within the Deathwatch. Army Renowns have restrictions. So the restrictions for this one is every model in your army must be Deathwatch, so no taking any Inquisitors or anything like that. Everything purely has to be Deathwatch. And all your kill teams must have the specialist upgrades. So in the Deathwatch Codex, you can pay between 20 and 35 points, I think it is, to give them a specialist. So take Fiora, for example. That's the troop-specific one. So if you pay I think it's 30 points for that one, put it onto a kill team, then they are getting benefits against troops. It does mean that the Deathwatch are already quite expensive, and it makes them a bit more elite because you're having to pay for those upgrades, which I'm not a massive fan of. But you'll see in a moment that actually it could be quite good for this. So they're the real only restrictions as well. I know, like the Adeptus Mechanicus one from the first Warzone book for Caradon that had loads of restrictions. So this isn't so restrictive, and you get quite a few benefits. You get access to an exclusive relic and warlord trait, which we'll talk about in a moment. You also get the Strike Force keyword, and you unlock an ability called Veterans of the Long Vigil. So at the start of each battle round, you can select one chapter tactic or successor tactic from Codex Space Marines. If you do, then until the next battle round, this unit has a chapter tactic or successor tactic instead of Xenos Hunters. So that's pretty cool. So you could, you know, for a turn, be using the Ultramarines chapter tactic or White Scars for all your models that have got this ability, which is going to be all your Deathwatch units that have got the Strike Force keyword. You are also still able to use the Brotherhood of Veterans stratagem, which basically does the same thing but to one unit only. So you've still got access to that stratagem, which is really, really cool. That leads us nicely onto the Warlord trait, which basically allows, it's an aura one, and it allows you to still have the Xenos Hunter chapter tactic in play, as well as your successor or chapter tactic that you've chosen at the beginning of the battle round. So that's pretty handy. The relic is, it's okay. Maybe I'm not seeing the potential here, but basically allows you on the fly, after revealing your secondaries or agendas, depending on if you're playing Crusade or match play, you can then choose to change it. So you could, you know, maybe if your opponent's picked a secondary and you're thinking, you know, maybe I want to be a bit careful, and the secondary I've chosen plays into his hands a little bit, you've got that option then to change that secondary. So it has potential usage. It's got a cool name. So yeah, maybe that'll see some use. You also get 4 stratagems, and these are powerful. So these are very, very good. The one that jumped out at me first was for 1 CP, Battlefield Teleportation. You pick a kill team or a character. At the start of the movement phase, you take them off the board, and then the reinforcement step, you deep strike them back down. All the normal rules apply, being 9 inches away, etc. But that's a really good way of getting around the board, and only for 1 CP as well. So I really, really like that. This one up here, the Specialism Extremis, this plays into the upgrades that you've given your kill teams to be able to make this force. So what this basically means is, if you spend the free CP, so it is expensive, but say you spend it on that kill team that I mentioned earlier that you've given the Furia upgrade, which is the troops one. If you then pop this on it in either the shooting or the combat phase, any hits automatically wound, as long as it's against that specialism. So in this case, it would be against a troops choice. Any hits would auto wound. That's really good. Really, really good. They're just so angry. They're just guaranteed to wound them, which is really, really fun. So yeah, some cool stratagems there. I would like to try it. I definitely would like to try it. What puts me off is having to pay those points for those upgrades, because it's making your Deathwatch army a bit smaller. I also like running Inquisitor, but that's not the end of the world. Could be quite fun. It could be quite fun. Definitely want to try it out in a narrative game, I think. Some artwork of the Guardsman. And we move on to Fortifications. So we've had data sheets for Fortifications before. This just brings the ones that are not locked to a particular faction up to date. So we've got the Sky Shield landing pad. We've got the Aegis Defense Line, the Fortress Redemption, which is the glorious Dark Angels centerpiece piece of terrain. The Bastion and the Void Shield Generator, and you've got the points cost there as well. I mean, I don't know anybody who pays points to have these in their army lists, but what I will say at this point is there's something that's going to come up towards the end of this book, which might tempt you to include them in a different style of gaming, but we'll come across that shortly. But they're in here. Okay, so we come to our first appendix. This is for the Inquisition. This was originally seen in Psychic Awakening Pariah. Absolutely no changes. So if you picked up Pariah, this is just a reprint in a newer book. So it means you can do away with that Psychic Awakening book now because you've got it in here. So absolutely nothing has changed. You've got all your data sheets for all your Inquisitors that are currently in production. You've also got all your relics, points costs, the armory of what all their weapons do, stratagems and psychic powers. They're all in here. So yeah, we've seen these before in Pariah. Here they are again. Had hoped to get some new stuff in there. Sadly we don't, but there you go. We then come across our second Codex Supplement. This is for the High Fleet Leviathan. So this, just like the Cadian one, includes 3 Warlord traits. You've got a selection of 4 relics, and you've got a couple of pages of stratagems. Now, these are really, really fun. Really, really fun. And it's funny because I'm on the fence about potentially saying goodbye to my Tyranids. I've got the Behemoth High Fleet, but these Leviathan ones are really, really fun. So we saw Gestalt Commander on Warcom. Check this one out. Swarm Leader. In your command phase, select one friendly Leviathan, infantry, beast, or swarm unit within 9 inches. They get full rerolls to hit. So it's basically like the Chapter Master rule for the Space Marines, but for the Tyranids. Relic-wise, we've seen the Crazy Blades that ignore the invulnerable saves. But what about the Void Crown? So this is cool. The bearer knows 1 additional psychic power. Great. It can also cast a psychic action as well as psychic power, because normally if you take one of the secondaries or you've got an agenda where you're doing a psychic action, you can no longer cast any of the psychic powers that turn. This means you can still cast one, and also any casts on a 9+, unmodified 9+, cannot be stopped in any way. So like an assurance that it's going to go off. I mean, a 9+ is quite high anyway, but obviously there are some shenanigans where people can get bonuses to stop your casts. At least you know that with that particular relic, if you cast a 9+, then it's gone off. So these are really fun, and it's really got me excited for what we may see in the next Tyranny book. Speaking of which, we've also then got a series of stratagems exclusive for Leviathan. A couple of really interesting ones here. For 1 CP, Alpha Leader Beast. This allows you to add a second Warlord trait onto your Warlord. You know, really increasing the strength and scope of your Warlord. Animated by the Hive Mind, again 1 CP, basically triggers your death throws without having to roll the dice. Guaranteed mortal wounds. And Relentless Flurry, 1 or 2 CP, and basically exploding 6s on your Leviathan units on an unmodified 6. It costs 2 CP if you use it on Gene Sealers, otherwise it's 1 CP. And it doesn't specify that it has to be an infantry or anything. You could use that on your, I don't know, Swarm Lord, for example, Hive Tyrant. But I think it's probably best used on a big unit of Hormigants, also not all the Gene Stealers, to get more hits. So some really fun stratagems there. Really, really fun stratagems. If you don't play the Leviathan, you might be thinking, I want some new rules for my Tyranids. Well, luckily there is something new, and that's the Hive Mind Synaptic Link. So this is different than some of the adaptations we got in the Psychic Awakening series. This is a new ability. So you've got a list of your Synapse creatures here. You've got a list of abilities, so a different one for each of them, and then a points cost. So these are upgrades. You can choose one of these if you've got a combat patrol sized army, all the way up to 4 of them if you've got an onslaught size. What these abilities have different uses, which we'll go through in a moment. But what's really cool with them is instead of, you know, just a simple case of you select a unit within Synapse range, instead you just have to be within the link range. So this is probably the best example here. So say your Hive Tyrant's got the ability and he wants to use it on, say these Gene Stealers, say these Termagants over here, because they're within range of the Broodlord, who himself is a Synapse creature in range of the Hive Tyrant, he can do that. He can give them that ability, which is fantastic. So it's like, that's how the hive mind, how I'd like to think it works. These messages being fed between. You don't have to worry too much about ranges, as long as you've got a Synapse creature within range of something within range you want to use an ability on. So I think that's really, really cool, and I hope kind of all Synapse abilities all kind of work in the same way, because I really think they should. I think they're missing. They were missing a trick. They've obviously picked it out now. Here's your abilities. So all your different Synapse creatures' abilities. The Hive Tyrant has got this malicious direction. So each time a model in the selected unit makes a paladin move, it can move an additional 3 inches to a maximum of 6. So that's really, really cool. Your Broodlord has got this one here, the Mastery of Shadows. Models in this unit are treated as having the benefits of light cover and heavy cover. And if a range attack comes at them from over 12 inches away, then they also get dense cover as well for the -1 to hit. So it's a nice little extra ability to have. It's not game breaking, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun by the fact that you don't have to be within a certain range, as long as it kind of links up with the Synapse creatures. So that's really cool. I really like that. We've then got our final appendix. This is for the Tyranids. So this was originally seen in Blood of Baal. Again, nothing has changed from this. So if you previously purchased Blood of Baal, you'll have seen all this before. The high fleet psychic powers, the new artifacts, the new stratagems, the new adaptations. They're all reprinted here for you, so you can get rid of that Blood of Baal. We're coming to the end of the book now, and we're coming across some Crusade rules. So these work hand in hand as well with the campaign earlier on in the book. You've only really got Crusade rules for the Astra Militarum and the Tyranids, aside from you've got some generic battle traits for the campaign and some requisitions. So regardless of what army you play, if you're playing in this campaign, you've got these exclusive items. You've also got some exclusive agendas as well for just playing in this campaign. But then you also have fortification upgrades. So this is what I was talking about when I mentioned that nobody really pays for fortifications for their match play armies. What I'm tempting to do for my Acadians is to purchase a few fortifications that really plays on this campaign and the next book, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So I've got like a bit of a stronghold slowly being built up, as well as my Crusade army, and then I can use these upgrades to further kind of buff up those buildings. So you've got stuff here like ammo store. Each time a model embarks in the building makes a range attack, you can reroll a hit roll of 1. Underground bunker, increase its capacity by 5. Give it invulnerable save. Give it a 5+ invulnerable save. Where's that? Void shield. Or if it's a void shield generator already, then it can go up to a 4+. So for a narrative point of view, I think that's cool. That's definitely something I want to be exploring with my Acadians. Speaking of Acadians, you've got agendas here. So you've got 2 agendas, 2 requisitions. The uplifting primer for 1 RP, increasing your leadership of your guys. So that's really cool. I do love the Crusade content. I can't wait to see what else they add in the full 9th edition book. You've got Astra Militarum battle traits, and you've also got Crusade relics as well, including the Star of Terror, which sounds particularly awesome. Gives the bearer a 4-inch invulnerable save, and if it's your Warlord, an extra CP at the beginning of the game as well. And obviously these ones, Astra Militarum ones and the Tyranid ones, which we're going to come on to in a second, they don't have to just be used in this campaign. They can be used in any of your games of Crusade. Speaking of the Tyranids, here are their agendas, including the agenda for terraforming, transforming the environment into all like your spores and stuff. So thematic, really cool. Requisitions and exclusive battle traits. And you also got some Crusade relics there as well, which are very cool. And it does give you a blank campaign tree based on 3 stages that you could photocopy and print out. And yeah, it makes it easy to complete your own campaign. And that brings us to the end of that book. So this is the difficult part for me, because I have a Tyranid army and I'm building an Acadian army, and I like Crusade. So this book is great for me, but that's ticking 3 boxes that is not going to tick everybody's boxes. So it's a bit of a book that kind of covers a lot of things, but nothing in particular. So I do believe it's up around the £30 mark, £25-30 I believe. So that's a lot of money if you don't have either of the 2 focused armies, the Acadians or the Tyranids. Because then you're only really left with sort of the campaign, which is cool, the Crusade content, which is really cool, but there's no battle plans, and the lore, which is good, but I don't know if it's worth it for the price. For the price, you really want to be enjoying the whole book. So it's a difficult one, really. For me, it's great, but for others, it might be a hard sell. Keep saying it. If it had battle plans in it, I think it would be much easier, a much easier pill to swallow for those that don't have or no interest in Cadians and no interest in Tyranids. So yeah, that's Zone Octarius. Time to take a look at our second book, focusing on Crusade. So that leads us to this next book, Crusade Mission Pack Containment. Does exactly what it says on the tin. So this is a new mission pack for Crusade. What you won't find in here is any exclusive relics or anything army specific. This book is designed to pick up and play through Crusade missions, regardless of what army that you're collecting. So I'm going to take a very quick flick through of this. You've got your contents, your introduction. You've got a little bit of Zone Octarius lore in here. A lot of it is kind of covered in the big book. But you might not necessarily have that. You might not have that Zone Octarius. The special thing about the missions in this is they all play off this Planet Strike. So veterans of Warhammer 40k may remember Planet Strike from, I think it was 7th edition. I think it was introduced around the same time as Cities of Death. And it was a different way of playing. It very much focused on attacking and defending. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You know, an army crashing into a planet, and then you've got defenders fighting them off. So all the missions kind of play off that. So this starts, obviously, talking about kind of the basics of working out who's attacker and defender. But then it very quickly goes on to, obviously, starts in agendas and stuff. The timeline of how the battle will flow. It'll very quickly go on to like your mission rules, because you've got some very specific and new stuff in here. For example, you've got the way your reserves work slightly different, because you've got like how the attackers and defenders would bring on their strategic reserves is going to be different. That's explained here. Your shock tactics is basically a slight change to how your strategic reserves would arrive, including the first battle round. However, if you do come down in the first battle round with your reserves, unless you've got the fly, infantry, or beast keyword, they're just going to be coming on from the table edge, not the normal kind of 9 inches away, because that's how it would work in one of these Planet Strike missions. And you also have firestorms as well. If you're the attacker, you've got the opportunity to deal out mortal wounds to these like entrenched defenders early doors at the beginning of the first battle round. So it makes for a very different kind of scope and game, which is very, very cool. And it goes on to talk about how the firestorm exactly works there. Oh, and you also have planetary control and strongholds. So planetary control basically means that when you've got an objective, even if you move off it, you've still got it until somebody takes it off you. So very Age of Sigmar, at the beginning of the game, the defender automatically has all the objectives. So you if you're the attacker, you've got to be getting the objectives off the defender. There's no neutral ones. But once you have, it's yours until somebody takes it back off you. And Strongholds basically allows you to put objective markers into buildings, and then they get their own special rules as well. Again, further incorporating the kind of mission narrative of Planet Strike. You've got a series of stratagems, both for attackers and defenders, which are narratively driven and fun. And you've got agendas as well, which again play off whatever role you're playing within these missions. You've got exclusive Crusade battle traits for Planet Strike, and it also then touches on the campaign that was in the Warzone Octarius book. So ideally, if you had both this book and the book we've just reviewed, you'd be able to make a killer campaign, especially if you've got obviously like the main rule book as well. You could really play around with what missions would bounce off well off one another. You know, if you're really into kind of creating your own narrative campaigns, you've got this massive toolbox of stuff that you could do. It's definitely something I want to try my hand at with these two books in particular. And you've then got a whopping, I think it's 21 different Crusade missions. I'm probably going to skip a few pages here, but they're split across the 4 different size games: Combat Patrol all the way up to Onslaught. So you've got an incursion one there, Planetary Assault, with clear instructions on what you need to do, clear agendas, and how you would deploy. So again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these pages, but safe to say, they're all really cool. Like, they're so different and so narrative. We've had so much fun playing Crusade games since the launch of 9th edition. I cannot stress enough, if you've not tried it yet, please try it. It's so fun. I think I actually prefer Crusade now to match play. Yeah, I do love a match play kind of game, but I really want to run a proper full Crusade campaign. I think it would just be so much fun. Planetary Onslaught, that sounds cool. Yeah, it's some really good missions in here. And that's kind of all the Crusade content, because then we go into all the basic rules. They're all reprinted in here for ease. So these are all your basic rules from the core rulebook, and they're also available to download online as well. But it's always nice to have them printed in these like handy kind of tournament ready books, which they've started to use a lot of. And that's it. That finishes off on that book. This is a much easier sell than the big Warzone Octarius book. If you've got an interest in Crusade, if you've been having fun with Crusade, I would almost go as far as saying this is a must-buy, because the missions, I mean, I just had a very quick flick through them then. They look so much fun. And the Planet Strike rules are ace. I mean, what I would do is probably, instead of like doing all the Planet Strike missions, I'd probably start with them and then go into some of your other Crusade stuff, like you Crusade battle plans from potentially Plague War, if it kind of matches your narrative, or from the main rulebook itself, or maybe delve in and out of here. There's so much stuff you can do, but this is ace. This is a really fun, really fun book. What I would have liked to have seen is the shadow missions from Warzone Octarius, the big book, actually in here, because I think that was such a fun new addition to the campaign. It might get missed because I don't know if as many people are going to buy that book, whereas I could see quite a few people buying this one. So I don't know. We'll have to see if people discover that. But if here at Sprues and Brews we run a narrative campaign, I will be stressing that we'll be using shadow missions from Warzone Octarius, because I think it's just so cool. And that brings us to the end of this flick through these two books. Our thanks as always to Games Workshop for sending these to us to review. As I mentioned at the top of the video, I have written up about both of these books over on spruesandbrews.com. You can check them out right now by hitting the link in the YouTube description below. And yeah, it's I'm looking forward to trying out some of these Crusade missions. I hope you've all enjoyed this video, and we'll be back again with more content in the near future. Until then, have a great week of hobby. Bye!